Imagine a world where the most powerful economy on Earth isn't run by markets, investors, or even consumers, but by the whims of a single politician. That's the nightmare scenario economists have warned about for decades. And today, that nightmare might be closer than you think. Because behind the headlines, a battle is brewing between Donald Trump and the Federal Reserve, one that could decide the future of money, inflation, and your financial freedom. This is the untold story of how U.S. central bank independence, the very system designed to keep politics out of your wallet, is now at risk. Chapter 1. The Unseen Battlefield. On the surface, the Federal Reserve seems boring. A room of economists in gray suits, raising or lowering interest rates, talking about inflation targets. But here's the truth. The Fed isn't just some academic club. It is the most powerful financial institution in the world. It controls the price of money. It decides whether mortgages are affordable, whether stock markets soar or crash, whether your job survives the next recession. And for over a century, the Fed has been guarded by one sacred principle: independence from politics. The idea is simple. If politicians could control the Fed, they would always push for cheap money, easy credit, and fast growth right before an election. Then, once the votes are counted, the economy would collapse under runaway inflation. Let's rewind to 2018. Donald Trump had just appointed Jerome Powell as Fed chair. He expected loyalty. Instead, Powell began raising interest rates to prevent the economy from overheating. Trump was furious. He broke decades of tradition by publicly attacking Powell. On Twitter, in rallies, in interviews, Trump called the Fed crazy, out of control, even the biggest threat to America's prosperity. At one point, Trump reportedly asked his aides if he could fire Powell outright, something no president had ever dared to do. Legally, it wasn't clear if he even could, but the fact that he tried sent shockwaves through global markets. The message was clear. Trump believed the Fed should serve the president, not the economy. And that belief didn't end with his presidency. Chapter 3. The 2024 Flashpoint. Fast forward to today. Trump is once again the Republican frontrunner. And this time, he isn't hiding his intentions. According to insiders, Trump's advisors are quietly drafting plans to strip the Fed of its independence. They want the White House to have more direct influence over interest rates, credit policies, even regulatory decisions. Think about that. The guardrails protecting America's economy from political interference ripped away. Supporters argue it's about accountability. Why should unelected economists decide the fate of millions? Shouldn't voters have a say? But critics see something far darker: the politicization of money itself. A shift that could destabilize not just America, but the entire global financial system. Chapter 4. History's Warning: Nixon and the Burns Tapes. This isn't the first time a president has tried to bend the Fed to his will. In the early 1970s, President Richard Nixon leaned heavily on Fed Chair Arthur Burns to keep interest rates low. Why? Because Nixon was running for re-election in 1972. We know this because of the infamous Burns tapes. Secret recordings captured Nixon pressuring Burns, saying, "I don't want to go out of town fast. I want to go out of town slow." Translation: keep the money cheap, keep the economy hot until after the election. It worked temporarily. Nixon won in a landslide, but the cost was devastating. Low rates helped trigger the great inflation of the 1970s, double-digit price hikes, gas lines, collapsing wages. It took a decade of pain and Paul Volcker's brutal rate hikes in the 1980s to finally kill it. The lesson? When politics controls the Fed, the public pays the price. Chapter 5. The Failed Nominees. Trump's war with the Fed wasn't just about Powell. It was also about who controls the seats around him. In 2019, Trump floated two controversial names for the Fed's Board of Governors: Stephen Moore and Herman Cain. Moore was a political commentator, not an economist. Cain was a former pizza executive and failed presidential candidate. Both were fiercely loyal to Trump, and both vowed to keep rates low. The reaction was swift. Economists, investors, even Republican senators balked. They warned that stuffing the Fed with political allies would destroy its credibility. In the end, both nominations collapsed. But the attempt revealed Trump's strategy: loyalty over expertise, politics over independence. And next time, with more power and a second chance, he might not fail. Chapter 6. Why this matters to you. At this point, you might be wondering, Why does this matter? Isn't this just a Washington fight over who pulls the levers? Here's why it matters. If the Fed loses independence, every major economic decision could become political. Interest rates lowered to juice the stock market before an election. Bank bailouts directed toward allies and swing states. Inflation allowed to run hot if it helps boost short-term growth. It wouldn't just be bad economics. It would be economic favoritism, rewarding political allies while punishing opponents. And in a world where America's dollar is the backbone of global trade, the ripple effects could be catastrophic. Chapter 7. The Global Stakes. The dollar isn't just America's currency, it's the world's. Oil, gold, global trade contracts, most are priced in dollars. And foreign investors buy U.S. debt because they trust one thing above all: the Fed's independence. The belief that America's central bank won't be hijacked by politics. If that trust evaporates, so does demand for U.S. debt. Interest rates would skyrocket. The stock market could implode. The dollar's dominance could falter. In other words, politicizing the Fed wouldn't just shake America. It could shake the entire global financial order. Chapter 8. What comes next? So where does this leave us? For now, the Federal Reserve is still independent. Jerome Powell continues to lead without direct political control, and markets around the world still trust that the Fed makes decisions based on data, not politics. But make no mistake, the storm clouds are gathering. Trump's allies are openly drafting blueprints to pull the Fed closer to the White House, giving future presidents unprecedented influence over monetary policy. Even more quietly, the debate has already shifted. Independence, once treated as sacred, is now up for discussion in Washington. The battle isn't about whether the Fed will face political pressure. That much is guaranteed. The real question is whether America's central bank can withstand that pressure, or whether cracks will begin to form in the very foundation of the global financial system. Chapter 9. The Forgotten Lesson. There's a quote from former Fed Chair William McChesney Martin. He said the Fed's job is to take away the punch bowl just as the party gets going. It's a thankless job. No politician likes being told no. No president wants higher interest rates before an election. But without that restraint, economies don't grow stronger, they burn out faster. The punch bowl gets spiked. The party turns reckless. And when the crash comes, it's always the people, not the politicians, who suffer most. The battle for the future. So as America stares down another election year, the real story isn't just about polls, rallies, or debates. It's about who controls the money. It's about whether the Fed remains an independent guardian or becomes another weapon in the hands of politics. History has shown us the dangers. Nixon, Burns, the Great Inflation. And yet, here we are again, standing on the edge of the same cliff. The battle for the Fed isn't just about economists and bankers. It's about your mortgage, your savings, your future. And that's why the question remains. When the next president comes knocking on the Fed's door, will it stand firm? Or will it finally give in? If you found value in this story, don't just scroll past it. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next video might just change how you see the world of business forever.